#1 motivational speaker in America, taught me 3 big lessons this year and has given me one secret that he hasn't told anybody else. And today you're gonna get that in this episode of Early to Rise Radio. Hi, my name is Craig Ballantyne and I am talking about the one and only Ed Mylett, author of the book Max Out. And Ed Mylett recently spoke down at an event down here in Cancun. I was able to go to it and he shared in that powerful presentation one line that just is absolutely gonna change my next year. So we're gonna dive into that in this episode. But first, I wanna tell you that I've actually interviewed Ed Mylett for this podcast. Episode 57, way back in 2018. I was at Bedros Keuilian's headquarters down in Chino Hills, California. And the crazy story is that Ed's parents live just down the street. So Ed stopped by to be on our Empire podcast with Bedros and myself, and I snuck him away to do a second interview. And that's where he revealed a secret that he had never shared before. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But from that first podcast episode, there was one thing where I interviewed Ed that he shared with me that you really need to know. This is the first, not motivational tip, but success tip from Ed. And if you don't know who Ed is, he's worth well over $100 million. He started the WFG, I believe he started the WFG financial company, or he's heavily involved in it. And he's been doing door-to-door sales, cold calling since early 90s. I mean, this guy has awesome stories. He once had a LeBaron, Chrysler LeBaron, an old cheap car, and he had Velcroed the sides of a Mercedes so it looked like it was a kit car, and it didn't work very well, and the headlight popped out at every intersection. He was telling this story down in Cancun. It was absolutely hilarious. He drove it for 5 years. And when he was doing his sales calls, unbelievable. I mean, this guy is the American dream because he came from a very harsh background. His father, like mine, was an alcoholic. And there was a time in young Eddie's life, that's what they used to call him, where Ed had to read his father as he was coming home from another binge drinking session. And he had to read his father's behavior to figure out how he could get his father to calm down, or if he was in a good mood, how to keep the good mood going. And Ed was only like 6 or 7 years old when he had to learn how to read people. And that became one of Ed's greatest gifts over time. But what Ed wanted to share in that first podcast was he said that all of his confidence in business came down to 2 simple things. Number 1, being more prepared than anybody else. So he was always more prepared for his presentations, his sales meetings. He was prepared to handle objections. He was more prepared than anybody else. And I think that goes back to the days when he was young Eddie and he had to be more prepared than anybody else in his household to deal with his father, because he was the oldest boy in the family and he had to protect his mom. And it was, I mean, that's a tough, harsh lesson, but Ed learned that at a young age. And he also said the other thing that was very simple that got him ahead in life was that he got to work earlier than everyone else. Now, I get a lot of emails about Ed Mylett's podcast. Ed Mylett has a very popular podcast. He's one of the most popular podcasters in the nation, in addition to the #1 motivational speaker. And the reason why people email me about Ed's podcast is because Ed mentions my Perfect Day Formula book in the first 11 minutes of the very first episode of his podcast, which he started back in 2016. I used to have people come to events and I used to do these workshops, 5 people, and I would ask them, like, how did you hear about my book? And they'd say, oh, Ed Mylett recommended it. I was like, Ed Mylett? Man, how did he even know about my book? I still to this day have no idea how Ed found out about my book in 2016. It only came out at the end of 2015. So it was barely out for a very long time. And he found the book before I even had heard of Ed Mylett. And he did a recommendation for it because he talks about the power of the morning routine that I share in the Perfect Day Formula. And he said, if you want a millionaire morning, or if you want a better morning routine, you got to follow Ballantyne. He didn't say my first name. He just goes, Ballantyne, author of Perfect Day Formula. Get Perfect Day Formula by Ballantyne. I'm like, okay. I'll take it, right? It doesn't have to be Craig Ballantyne. So anyways, Ed Mylett recommended that book because it's about being prepared and getting to work earlier. Then he also said he stayed at work later. Now, that's a conversation to have another day about, working too many hours, but it definitely, when you do the work, you'll be successful. So Ed's message here is keep things simple. Don't make it complicated because, as Ed said on that first podcast, if you make things complicated, whether it's weight loss, whether it's getting rich, whether it's writing a book, whether it's filming videos, if you make it complicated, you're gonna have a reason to procrastinate. So don't make success complicated. And If you want to hear what Ed actually said, the very few words that he said about my book, in the first episode of Ed's podcast from 2016, where he recommends Perfect Day Formula. Now, the second message that I've heard Ed share on stage many times, including recently down here in Cancun, is something that I just love. And it actually really drives me forward. And it goes like this. Make your vision so big and powerful that you get other people's big and powerful visions to fit inside of yours. Let me break that down, what it means, because you might be kind of confused. What he's saying as an entrepreneur is that you have to have such a big vision for your company that other successful people who want to become millionaires or want to write books and bestsellers and want to become influencers, your vision has to be so big that those people, those really successful people, those A players, those rock stars, can come into your company and become bestsellers and can get $1 million incomes. So there's a couple of people who are doing this, like Ed Mylett's doing this with all of the financial advisors that he teaches to go out there and make money. But Grant Cardone does a great job of this because Jared Gallant, who's his kind of right-hand guy at Cardone, he has the Young Hustlers podcast. He's a millionaire through real estate, etc. And so is Ryan Setko, the guy who used to be an airplane pilot who was flying Grant around, is now a real estate millionaire because Grant's vision was so big that all these people were able to fit their visions inside of it. I think that's absolutely amazing. Another guy who does this, as it seems, I don't know his business very well, but Dave Ramsey, who's very, very wealthy and on the radio, he has Ramsey recommended advisors in different areas, and those people are achieving their dreams inside of Dave Ramsey's vision. So there's lots of examples of this. Now, if you're a gym owner and you want to have this big vision, well, you could have a big vision where you have multiple gyms and personal trainers who want to make a six-figure income can come into your big vision and make that six-figure income. In my business, I have multiple coaches who want to become millionaires, who want to become best-selling authors, who want to grow a huge personal brand, and I'm allowing them to do that inside of my company. I'm giving them an environment in which they can flourish because my vision is so big of helping millions and millions of people through our coaching that they're going to have incredible opportunities to become the head coach like Daniel Woodrum is in our business right now. And he's going to get rich by being our head coach and training other coaches and coaching our clients. And then Gavin McHale, the mindset master, he's going to get rich because he's going to write a book that's going to be a bestseller. He's going to have courses that he's going to make a bunch of money from that are going to be sold to our company's email subscribers. He's going to do mindset training. He's going to be a great coach in our mastermind. And then Galel Fajardo, who's our marketing expert and our coach, and he's going to get rich by creating courses and doing workshops inside of my company's vision. That's what you need to do if you want to really expand your business. And so I love that message from Ed Mylett. There's another message from Ed Mylett that I talk about all the time. That Ed Mylett wakes up every day, and because he's a faith-based man, he says, you know what, there is the best version of Ed Mylett that God has created. And when I pass away, I'm gonna go to heaven and I'm gonna meet this best version of Ed Mylett. And I wanna be as close as possible to that best version of Ed Mylett. So every single day I'm improving myself. That's powerful. Now, what I didn't know until Ed mentioned this at the recent event in Cancun was that Ed has had heart attack. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Ed Mylett has had a heart attack and probably nearly died. And he's only in his early 50s. It's crazy to hear that. Ed pushes himself pretty hard and he's getting himself, kind of pulling back a little bit and taking care of himself so he'll be here for a long time. But he can personally improve without pushing himself so hard that he has another heart attack. But I just love that vision because there's the 100 out of 100 Craig Ballantyne. Well, where am I? Where am I? Maybe I'm at a 65 right now. There's so much more that I can do. I can create a bigger vision. I can help more people. I can be a better father, better husband. I can do all these things. So I'm going to get better every single day. Never peak. The best is yet to come, as my friend Bedros Keuilian says. Now, here's the secret. Here's the secret that Ed Mylett shared with me and on my podcast back in 2018. He said, no one has ever asked me this before. So we go back to the start of the show when we talked about how Ed's father was an alcoholic. Like my father was an alcoholic. And when I heard that, my father never quit drinking, but Ed's father did. And so I was endlessly fascinated with how his father quit drinking because I could never see my father quit drinking. Not only did it not happen, I could not imagine it happening. I could not imagine my father seeking help or my father, taking the advice of my demands of my mother and stop drinking. He never did. So how on earth does a man quit being an alcoholic? So that's what I asked Ed on the podcast. And no one had ever asked him that before. And he said that one day, and I can't remember exactly what the reason why, but Ed's father pulled over and decided, he's driving and I don't know if he was drunk or if he wasn't drunk, and he pulled over and he decided he made a commitment that day that he was going to quit drinking. And I don't know if he told young Eddie that day. You have to listen to the full podcast to get the story that Ed told that time. But he quit drinking and he went to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings for 35 years, up until I think his father was in like early 90s no, he wasn't early 90s. It was in his 80s because Ed's only in their early 50s and he just passed away maybe 2 years ago during COVID. So Ed's father went to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings 4 times per week from that day that he decided to quit until he died. He didn't stop going once he hit 65 years old or 70 years old or 80 years old. He went always, because of the accountability. And the accountability was the secret that allowed him to quit drinking. Just like I say, if you want to really change your life, you want to move mountains in your life, you must have accountability to somebody you deeply do not want to disappoint. You must have accountability to somebody you deeply do not want to disappoint. That will make you move mountains in your life. That will get you to go 110% when your coach gives you 100% of your action items. You'll do 110%. You'll do everything they say and more, and then go back and say, what's the next step? When I met Bedros Keuilian and I had that guy as a big brother accountability partner, that's when I finally did all the things that allowed me to improve personally and go out and meet Michelle and become the husband that she needed, and then now the dad that my kids need. If I didn't have that accountability, I don't know if I'd ever have gone the extra mile, because it was accountability to somebody I deeply did not want to disappoint. And Ed's father had that to all the other men in the group for 35 years. 4 times per week. Absolutely incredible. Now, the last thing that I want to share with you from Ed is when he was speaking in Cancun, he said something that I'd never heard him say. And I've heard him talk a lot at events and in his podcasts. He said this. He looked out at the audience and there was a lot of, rich people, not wealthy people, but rich. Everybody in the room was a millionaire. I'm sure of it. And we were all there because we were being rewarded by a company for our sales efforts. It's one of my little side hustles, making a bunch of money in sales for this company. And he looked out at everybody in the room and said, listen, you guys are doing great. You got the pools, you got the cars, you're doing great. But compared to what? And I was like, whoa, man, compared to what? Like, you're doing great compared to where you started. You probably all started blue collar or, maybe like Ed, poor, son of an alcoholic, like me, farm boy, son of an alcoholic. I know other people in the room that were sons of, New York firefighters and other people that, came from poverty in Cleveland, just some of the people that I could think of that I knew in that room. So we're doing great compared to where we came from. And you're doing great compared to where you came from. You're doing great compared to where you came from, but compared to where you can be, are you doing great? Compared to that 100 out of 100 you, are you doing great? Remember I said I'm doing a 65 out of 100 right now. I'm not doing great compared to where I can be. I'm doing great compared to where I came from. And that was Ed's message of the day that, man, that got me. That really, really got me. I'm doing great compared to where I came from, but I got a long way to go because there's greatness inside of you. There's greatness inside of me. There's more greatness inside of us to go to the next level and then go to the next level and then go to the next level. And so you cannot let complacency kill you. Kill your dreams, kill your momentum, kill your motivation. No, you got to dig deep in this year, in this decade, in this lifetime, and always go to the next level. Just like Ed, committing to Kaizen, constant and never ending improvement. If a guy like that, who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, more money than you could ever dream of, more money than you ever thought you would make, is still pushing harder than you, man, that's a wake-up call. Now, don't push so hard, you have a heart attack. But you're doing great compared to where you came from. But never forget, you could be doing better compared to what you're capable of. So that's the final message I want to share from Ed Mylett today. That's really great. Number 1 is all confidence in business comes down to the simple things, preparation and getting to work early. Number 2 is that you need to make your vision so big and powerful that you can fit everybody else's vision inside. Number 3, remember that there is the greatest version of you and you need to push towards it. Number 4 is the power of accountability. And number 5 is that, man, you have greatness inside of you. So no matter how well you're doing compared to where you came from, there's always more. Never peak. The best is yet to come. Absolutely love that conversation I had with Ed over 5 years ago. Absolutely love that presentation I saw from Ed this year. And I can see just how much better he's gotten. He's grown from 100,000 followers on Instagram when I knew him then to well over, I think it's over 3 million now. Unbelievable. And he's written best-selling books and doing more. So that's the message for you. Go out and do more, because the power of one more, as Ed talks about in his book, is the thing that will set you free. I'm Craig Ballantyne from Early to Rise Radio. One last thing, go and get the perfect day formula that Ed recommends in the book, and then go back and actually, we're going to put in the link below to episode 57 when I interviewed Ed Mylett for the Early to Rise Radio podcast. It was originally only on our iTunes channel, but we're gonna make sure it's on YouTube now so that you can go and watch it. Even though it won't be a video of Ed and I, just be pictures, but you can listen to the man's wisdom and see how he has grown in the last 5 years. So go watch that and drop a comment down below, share this with a friend, and we'll see you in the next episode.